I am Kenny Anderson, Director of Multicultural Affairs for the City of Huntsville, and welcome to Impact. Each week we bring you exciting information about great things that are happening across the spectrum of our community. You know, the holiday season is one of those special times of year for family, fun, and food. And of course, this is always a great time for us on this broadcast to highlight just not the wonderful ways that we can eat, but the healthy ways that we can eat. So we thought we'd have our annual Healthy Eating Show. And joining me today is none other than Nutritionist and Culinary Instructor, as well as Health Ministries Co-Director for the South Central Conference of Seventh-day Adventists, Paula Eakins. Paula, welcome to the broadcast.
I am so glad to be here, Kenny.
I'm glad to have you in one of your favorite places and your favorite zones here. We've got food here. We're talking about health and nutrition,
yes,
and focusing on people really getting through the season in a good way.
In a good way.
Yeah. One of the challenges, of course, that people face during this time of year is that they are exposed to so many opportunities for eating because the holidays represent a time of coming together. And of course, as people come together, they eat. But they don't always obey the laws of health and nutrition during this time. Violations are everywhere.
That's right. That's right.
And so we wanted to talk a little bit about this today, and then we'll have a second show where we actually talk about some specific aspects of how people can actually eat foods but remain healthy. What are some of the biggest challenges that you find as a nutritionist for people at this time of year as it relates to health?
Well, you know, when it comes to the holidays, Kenny, and especially when we start moving toward Thanksgiving and everybody's like getting all revved up because they know they're going to eat crazy and everything they ever want to eat, everything they had when they were younger. But then it's a time in which we really need to watch that because this is where we really can get into trouble, picking up the pounds. And then later on, we have to find a way to get the pounds off.
Yeah. And of course, this is a time of year when there are so many things happening. Holiday receptions take place, yes, family dinners take yes place just a little while before the Christmas holiday. The Thanksgiving holiday comes along. And so really there's like a 6 to 8 week period in which people have kind of thrown all caution to the wind. And people really need to be mindful of that.
You know, don't forget, Kenny, also those office parties. Yeah. You know, they have a lot of office parties also that's going on with that. So it's a continual thing, and it's bad because it can actually cause some issues, whether you might already have a problem with high blood pressure or heart disease or whatever, high cholesterol. Even that goes to the wind when people think about, I'm just going to eat it and I'll work on it later. But that later can actually cause more problems for us, just saying I'm going to just hold off, but rather to look and be more sensible about the holidays.
Yeah. What are key indicators for you as a nutritionist when you're talking to people? I know we talk about smaller portion sizes. We talk about maybe the time in which a person eats or that they no longer eat during the course of a day. What are some of those fundamental keys that you focus on when you talk to people about these things?
Believe it or not, one of the things that people usually do when it comes to holiday eating, Kenny, is they avoid or forget about eating at breakfast. Because see, if you eat breakfast, then that means that you are going to wherever you're going to go, or you're taking something to, or even at your own place. When you eat your breakfast, you're not going to be as crazy when it comes to time for dinner. So we say, make sure you get that breakfast in the first thing in the morning.
And I mean, give me some other things. I know
well,
you
know that we got the breakfast thing going on. And then, okay, now I know that people say, I'm not really going to exercise either. But Kenny, you really have to get out there and get the exercise in. As a matter of fact, we always say about 2 or 3 weeks before you even get ready for all the holiday stuff, go out there and walk. You know, you don't have to run a marathon or anything like that, but you got to get the exercise in. And even after you eat the meal, you know, most of the time when people eat the meal, they usually sit down and watch TV and go to sleep, okay? So now, so what about if you ate the meal and then took a walk? See? So that's another good one. The other one is, you know, when people start thinking about the holidays and thinking about their favorite foods, the hostess is also responsible for what's on that table. A lot of times people might come to your house to visit with you, and as the hostess, you should know that there might be individuals there that have some different health issues. So you want to fix some plates that they will be able to eat as well, or cut back on some of the things you would normally have so that everybody can eat. Now, you mentioned about that plate size. I've got friends, they'll always say to me, well, Paula, you know, I'm just going to fill my plate up and stack and pack it. And, you know, you got a rim on those plates. And they go all the way up as high as they can go without that rim, okay? Well, we always say, you know, but instead of actually just saying, I can't have all that, if you got a smaller plate, Kenny, you actually could put some of everything on your plate in a couple tablespoons of it. And that way you still get a chance to at least have something rather than say, I can't have it.
Wow.
Okay.
I got a visual picture of that, like that little plate like this. And somebody says, I'm going to teaspoon of this, a tablespoon of that. What an experiment.
That is an experiment, but believe it or not, you'd be surprised. You know, our plates, Kenny, at first was like 8 inches. Then they went to 10. Do you know that the average large plate now is sitting between 14 and 16 inches? Wow. So the plates have gotten larger, and with the plates being so much larger. So even if you kept that 8-inch thing going and kept it in the middle of the 8-inch, you would find that 8-inch inside is almost a 6.
So the goal is not to fill the plate.
That's right. You know, you still can get a little bit of something, I say, from everything, rather than just say, I can't have it.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
And of course, you mentioned some of the health issues that people have. So people obviously want to control their sugar intake, their salt intake. They want to, you know, focus on foods that are not high in fat and other kinds of things that perhaps can exacerbate conditions or maybe cause a condition.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The thing that's so important here is that, yes, the people, like I said before, as the host, the individual, and even a person going somewhere, why not take something that you could also eat as well? Because, you know, you hate to go to a party or go to a dinner and you find out you can't have anything. So the host is responsible to make sure that her food is okay for everybody, but don't change out the superfood. In other words, you don't want to be serving stuff that people have never seen before, because you're now trying to go into this whole health kick. But you want to look at the foods that people are used to eating, but healthier. And that just takes a little bit of thought. You know, cutting back on the amount of sugar, a little bit back, okay? And changing up what you're putting into your greens or whatever. Just making some changes, but not really, we say, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's keep the food simple. Let's keep the foods as superfood. Now, superfood, Kenny, means that we all are raised up with superfoods. Now, if you think about your mom and you think about when you used to go home for holidays, there was always something you would tell your mom, make sure I got that, Mom, when I get there, and she'd always fix it.
Mac and cheese for me.
There you go. So superfoods means they are foods you grew up with, and you're not necessarily willing to let go. So now the object is to still have those foods, maybe in a healthier format, but not to let go of the mac and cheese. But let's find a way to fix the mac and cheese so that when you come home, you're still okay.
It's much healthier. And we're going to talk about that actually in our next segment, which I'm really excited about. We see the spread here today and this delicious looking food. We're actually going to talk a lot more about that. I wanted to ask you this because a lot of people today are talking about things like being a vegetarian, being a vegan, eating a little less meat, meat alternatives and substitutes and things of that nature. I know tofu's a big thing, and everybody can't prepare everything. That's right. And so the holiday season is probably not the time to start experimenting. However, there probably are some opportunities, if you are a very good cook in these areas, to perhaps expose people to options. As opposed to the routine, regular things that people would have. What are your thoughts about that?
Absolutely, Kenny. You know, I mean, I just think about back in the day in the area of trying to teach people to eat more healthy, that yes, things like tofu and stuff came out and people were like, Well, Kenny, one of the things that happens in our ministry as we're ministering in our community is that we don't talk about tofu. We actually fix the food and we let them eat it. And then they'll say, what is that? Okay? and also now we always say it's a good time to actually go plant-based, we call it plant-based eating, because there is so many more options available to us now. There was a time when all you saw was tofu, but now there's so many companies out there that's making things that look like, taste like, act like the real thing that people are like, wait a minute. Is this okay for me to eat? Right. And so, yeah, we have a lot more options available to us, and the sodium level is low. Back in the day, it used to be only canned items. Now we're actually in the frozen food section. The frozen food section means it's going to be less sodium, less sugar, no cholesterol in many cases. So we have a lot more options, and this is an ideal time for a person to consider a plant-based type of diet.
Yeah, it's amazing, I think, because so much of the holidays is consumed with the thoughts of eating, the practice of buying food and making decisions about where you're going to eat, when you're going to eat, and how much you're going to eat. And so that's so important. You have some really, really interesting things over there. And I know in our next segment, we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But I'm going to walk over that way so I can take a look at some of that.
Yes, come
and
on
just
over
kind of
here.
just kind of do a little sneak preview on this process, because in our next discussion, we're actually going to talk about some of these things.
Yes, we are.
You've prepared these things, and I think one of the things that you wanted to get across the most was this notion of how people can really not sacrifice the things that they used to love, but they can actually do them in a much healthier way. How do you introduce that concept to people?
Well, most of the time, my job as a nutritionist is that when I go before a community and talk, I want to study that community. I want to know, who am I talking to, and what might be their habits, or their eating habits, their eating patterns, and maybe what might be the diseases that might be going to a heart presentation or a high blood pressure presentation. So my job as a nutritionist is to find out what is my audience and then prepare the foods that match that audience. So in other words, if I were doing something in a Hispanic group, I'm going to make all my dishes Hispanic, okay? I'm going to show them how to make that more healthier. If I'm doing it in a group that's a mixed group, I'm still going to look around and try to figure out, because you can know when you're signing people up for these classes who's coming. And so once I know my audience, then I prepare my foods to match the audience.
Don't you see the community becoming much more interested in these kinds of things? I know recently I saw you and Curtis, by the way, both of you do nutrition seminars. Curtis is your husband.
Yes,
we hadn't talked about him yet, but we definitely want to include him in this conversation. But you guys are out there on the front lines talking to people about these things. Went to an event recently. There were hundreds and hundreds of people there. It seems like people are really demanding these options and alternatives. How does that make you feel as a long-term nutritionist? You're excited about that?
I am so excited. As a matter of fact, the event you talked about, Kenny, when the doors opened up and I saw those people run through that door, I'm like, oh my goodness. And I even think the presenter, she was like, oh, I didn't expect that many.
Right.
And we've had that. The community is really getting more and more open. And also the community is getting more sick, Kenny. So when there's heart problems and cholesterol issues and high blood pressure and medicines that people are on, they're looking for other alternatives. But remember, they don't want to let go of that superfood. So you got to find a way to get that superfood back up in there as much as possible. And then they're more open. If they see things that they're used to, like I got my collard greens with me. Now, who don't like that, okay? They're like, no, I know she didn't do collard greens. Yeah, we did. So when we do the kind of foods that they're used to, they're like, I might try that. And so with that in mind, we try to look to and address the audience, not my likes, the audience is like, what the audience really wants. And then from there, we move into fixing stuff for them.
So in our next segment, what we're going to do is actually talk a little bit about these specific items here. And I'm really excited to learn more about what we have here. It all looks delicious. I think there's going to be a little tasting going on, perhaps.
Yes.
And I'm excited about that. But in the meantime, as I said, you and Curtis, your husband, do nutrition seminars. You travel around this country sharing this great message to so many different people. How can people connect with you and get more information?
Well, you know, we actually have a website that's out there, Kenny, and they can connect with me on the website. As a matter of fact, we actually are asking people we'll give our email address out, and they can actually know where we're going to be and what we're going to be doing, and then they're open for them to come to the presentations.
Okay, great. So you all are available to do that. People
Yes.
are watching this afternoon, can reach out to you.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
you like going to various churches and youth groups and community centers and places all over
Everywhere.
where people are interested in this
Everywhere.
information.
Yes.
Paula Eakins, nutritionist extraordinaire. Thank you for being a part of this conversation today.
It's a pleasure.
All right. I want to thank you all for being a part of the conversation today, and we hope that you will definitely join us for our next edition of the broadcast. Of course, we always try to provide opportunities for you to be able to share information about things that are happening in our community and also connect with the people that we're talking to on this broadcast, because we believe that they can make an impact in your lives as well. We, of course, hope that you enjoyed the show that you just watched on this broadcast, and you can check it out on our Facebook page, which is Impact with Kenny Anderson, and you can also see some behind-the-scenes shots of what happens once the camera stops rolling. For Impact, I'm Kenny Anderson, and you do not want to miss part 2 of Eating Healthy for the Holidays. We'll see you then.